Welcome to Frickety Frack. We do talk back. Thank you for joining us in a special episode of Frickety Frack. My name is Patrick, and I'm Frack, and I'm on my own for this episode. And so, Frickety Frack, We Do Talk Back is a show airing once a week where we will discuss different aspects of fandom and how they relate to the gospel. So, we're going to be taking, since I am on my own this episode, we're taking a quick break from Kingdom Come while my brother Jeff is unavailable. And so, just as many of you are, we are fans of many things. And so, when we finish Kingdom Come in the next episode, we'll go in a different direction and look at anything ranging from anime, comics, video games, movies, or just anything that we're fans of. And so, in the final part of Kingdom Come, we'll announce what we're going to be going on to next. But so, right now, we're just going to take a quick break and do something a little fun for me. And so we got the name for the show from our father who dubbed us Frickin' Frack since we were kids. And so in this episode, we are going to look at Astro City #1. And this is Astro City Volume 1, #1. And so you might ask yourself, why Astro City? It's not a hugely well-known comic series, but one of the reasons why I chose it is because it's actually my favorite comic series of all time. Now, I know in the very beginning of this show, the very first episode that we recorded, we discussed, our favorite superheroes. My favorite superhero is the Flash, and specifically Wally West. And so, but what I've come to, reading all these different comic series for many years, I've come to find that I really love Astro City. And the reason why is because I love the world that we live in, and we do spend some time focusing on certain heroes quite a bit, and we'll get more into that in just a moment. But one of the things that Astro City does better than any comic that I've read is looking at how real life people would do in a superhero world. And so it's a lot of times in this kind of setting, Astro City and Watchmen are compared. Astro City looks at what real life people would go through in a superhero world, where Watchmen is the reverse of that, where what would superheroes do in the real world. And so the Astro City comic world and everything is much more fantastical and fantasy and superheroes, and it's such a huge part of everyday life. Where Watchmen, and listen, I'm oversimplifying Watchmen significantly here, but Watchmen takes what would happen if superheroes were in these real life conflicts. Like Watchmen goes through and discusses like what would superheroes have done in Vietnam. What about the arms race? The nuclear arms race. Those kind of things, and how that affects global politics and that kind of thing. And so I will have to admit, Watchmen is much more dour and dark, and Astro City is actually, generally speaking, much brighter and much happier, much more hopeful. So Astro City is my favorite comic series of all time because it does a great job of looking at what real life people would do in these kind of situations. And, hopefully we'll be able to get to spend some more time in Astro City later on. But I wanted to cover the first issue of Astro City. And so the title of this issue is called In Dreams. And so we start with seeing a man flying in his dreams, and he's talking about flying in dreams and how much he loves it and enjoy it. And you can really see the joy on his face while he's flying in his dreams. But then that comes crashing down when his alarm goes off. But we find out that it's not his normal everyday alarm, but the emergency alert alarm telling him about an alert or a disaster that needs his attention. And so the person wakes up. He complains about feeling heavy and old and exhausted, and you can see it on his face the way the artist does this issue. Just you can see the heaviness and the sadness on this person's face. And so he gets dressed, and you see that he is in a red superhero suit with a unique symbol on the chest, and then he has kind of this interesting kind of blue cape around him, and the alert sends him to Manila, and he wishes for to have a nice flight, but he knows he doesn't have the time to do it. And so as he rushes off, he notes how long it takes him to get there from Astro City to Manila. It takes him 6.2 seconds. And so he sees that there is a tidal wave, and he uses an energy net of some kind to stop the wave. And later on in other comic issues, we find out what his power is actually called, or this particular kind of thing is called. It's called Empyrean fire. And so he deals with the tidal wave and the after effects, and then on his way back home, he goes through Turkey and fights a pyramid group. We don't really know what that is in this particular issue. You find out more about pyramid later. And so having dealt with that, he gets to work just in time, and we find out that this person's name is Asa Martin, and he works as a fact checker for the Current magazine / newspaper. That's the title of the magazine. It's called Current. And so then we find out about his Zixometer, and he sets it, which allows him to find out where trouble is. Like, it connects to the computer system, and through that he's able to connect to 75 news channels, and the Zixometer tells him, okay, well, here's where you are needed. And so it sends him to different places to save lives, stop disasters. But while doing that, it also does his work for him, so that so instead of being stuck in an office, he can go and save people. So he performs his heroics all over town and other places all over the world. And each time he counts, every time he says, like, went to Boston, I went to, downtown, and he counts how long he spent flying that day. So during that, during all of his heroics, he also meets up with Honor Guard, and that's where we actually finally find out the name of the hero. His name is Samaritan. And then while he's there with the Honor Guard responds to a bank robbery, and then afterwards, Samaritan heads back to work, and he gets more work to do as Asa Martin because he's so good at his job. He contemplates having the Zixometer make mistakes to make his work a little bit more human, but he really knows that's not the right thing to do. During this, he also laments not having the time for relationships because he's so needed as Samaritan. He averts more disasters, saves more people. Then one time he even mentions that he slows down enough for the girl that he helps to see him, to be reassured. Yet because he does that, he was almost not there in time to save another person in Boston. Samaritan heads to an awards banquet where he receives an award from the Astro City firefighters, and he puts the awards in his, and we're going to go quote unquote closet. It's this pocket dimension that he saves his awards in. Then he's attacked by the living nightmare. Samaritan wins by throwing the living nightmare at the sun, but it dissipates after getting too far from Earth. Afterwards, Samaritan goes and saves some other people. He retires to his apartment, worn out from the day of saving people, and he falls asleep dreaming of flying again. So that was the first issue of Astro City, kind of in a nutshell. I might have talked a little too much about it, but it's just really fascinating to see this. And I did want to go over as much of the stuff that Samaritan had to do in a day, to really kind of lead into the biblical theme, and I'll get into that in just a moment. But so there's so many fascinating things with Astro City, and even just in this first issue, we get in this there are reflections of DC and Marvel and other superheroes in Astro City. Just as an example, Honor Guard is a reflection of the Justice League slash Avengers. Basically in whatever comic book universe, Honor Guard is the most powerful superhero team. So like in the Invincible comics, it's the Guardians of the Globe. Let's see. I'm trying to think of what other superhero teams are there that I'm really upset that I'm blanking on this. But we have the Avengers, Justice League, the Guardians of the Globe, those kind of things. We also see the First Family mentioned, and they represent the Fantastic Four, and we'll get more. You get more of the First Family in other issues of the comics, and so. But there's also throughout this there are homages to comic creators throughout the city, like streets are named after them. Areas of the city are named after. There's like Schwartz Road. There's Mount Kirby. That's after Jack Kirby, and so it's really fun. So like if you are a comic history trivia nerd, then Astro City is for you, because then there's all of these little, like playing like Where's Waldo. It's like, okay, so this is the name of a place. What, I wonder what comic creator this is named after, or if it is, or something like that. And so it's really fun. It's really it's fun to do. It stretches your trivia of heroes and things like that. And so in this particular issue, we spend a lot of time focused on Samaritan. I mean, everything is about Samaritan in this issue. He is the most powerful hero on the planet. He is the Superman of this comic universe. And while doing research of this comic and this particular issue, one of the things that Kurt Busiek, and I apologize, you know what? I forgot to mention the creators in this comic. Astro City was created by Kurt Busiek and Brent Anderson is the artist, and then Alex Ross also gets creator credit because he helps with character design, so he also has creator credit, but he's also the cover artist, and so his artwork is it's like all over this, and it's great. And so, like I said, he helps with character design, but the main creators are Kurt Busiek, Brent Anderson, and Alex Ross. And so this world that we've created, in this comic universe that we've created, Samaritan is the most powerful. And so Kurt Busiek, wanted Samaritan because he is, and created him to reflect on what the Superman, the all-powerful hero, would go through in this society, and how other people would see him and things like that. And it's just this really great reflection on this, and so Astro City does these great things where it talks about these kind of things like what is life like in this as an all powerful superhero, or he's not all powerful because like he even mentions in this, and we'll get into this more when we get to the biblical theme, that Samaritan even mentions is like people still die while I'm saving lives, and so he can't be everywhere all at once. He made the mistake, and so one of the things that I also love, like I said, that we look at the human experience in this superhuman world, and so we get kind of a taste of what workplace politics would be like if you were working with a superhero, and not only any superhero, but the Samaritan, the most powerful, the most popular hero in Astro City, and probably in all the world at this point. And so people make comments about Asa that they fascinate him because it's like, oh man, this guy really loves his job. But you think if he loves his job so much, he gets here just in time to start working. He doesn't get here early or anything like that. Then they also talk about how he's like, man, I first thought he was standoffish, but he's clearly the most busy person on the planet, which he is, just not for the reasons that they think. Then there's the whole boss that he annoys because he has to keep his door locked because he's not in his office. And since he's not in his office, he doesn't want people busting in. He's like, oh, well, where's Asa? And, he doesn't want to lose his secret identity, although he doesn't really use it all that much. And we'll get more into that, too. And so this really kind of makes me think about how does Clark Kent get his job done? And as we mentioned in a previous episode, we just briefly mentioned the Superman and Lois TV show. And I really think that they nailed it on the head of having Superman, or having Clark Kent and his family move back to Smallville for him to work on the farm. Now, he hasn't actually done any farm work, but, that's a whole other thing. But that's actually a really good job for him because he could put in like 30 seconds of work and do all the work he needs to do on the farm, and then spend the rest of his time as Superman. So actually think that's a really good job for him to have, because he doesn't have to really worry all that much about office politics, where being a reporter, he's hardly ever around. He can use the excuses like, oh, well, I was out chasing leads, chief. And where instead he was actually just stopping bank robbers, and then he would write about those stories. But it's just kind of this is how people would probably have viewed Clark at the Daily Planet and those kind of things. And so I just really love how they really touch on what would a real person think of a superhero. So those are some of the things that I found interesting, and there's many more things that I found interesting, but it's going to tie into the biblical theme. And so when I was reading this issue, the thing that really stuck with me in this comic was that I was exhausted after reading it. Now, it wasn't like physically draining for me, but the storytelling by Kurt Busiek and Brent Anderson in this particular issue, I felt the tiredness of Samaritan, and it really brought me into that, and it just really touched on me. So I was going to touch on being tired, and specifically the quote, "I can't save everybody. People die even while I'm saving lives here, but I can still do what I can, can't I?" And so I found Psalm 62, and particularly verses 5 through 6, and it states, "Yes, my soul find rest in God. My hope comes from him. Truly, he is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will not be shaken." Now, I personally recommend reading all of Psalm 62. It's a really great one, and especially for when you are feeling kind of attacked, when you're feeling worn down, when you're feeling kind of exhausted, read this. And one of the things that I love about the Psalms in general is that a lot of times some of the times they'll start off in negatives, and but then it always ends with hope. And this one is similar, that it ends with hope. Now, in this psalm, in verse 1, it says, "Truly my soul finds rest in God. My salvation comes from him. Truly he is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will never be shaken." That's the beginning of Psalm 62. And it in this, he doesn't start off, the author doesn't start off negative of this psalm, but it does recognize, you know, being tired, being attacked, and we can only find our rest truly in God. And that's just, important for us to know. And so in this issue, we feel Samaritan's tiredness, we feel his exhaustion. He wakes up tired. He's like, ugh. And so if his day is normal like this, like if he gets in at 1 a.m. every day and he gets an alarm alert at 4:30 in the morning, it's only 3.5 hours of sleep. Now, granted, he is superhuman, so he probably doesn't need as much sleep as the rest of us physically, but we also have to think about his mental energy that he is spending being a hero all of this time. Um, and so, if we go, you know, 1 a.m., 4:30 in the morning to 1 a.m., so that's, 20 hours, 21 hours of constant superhero work that he has to do. Now he spends a few moments working, um, but then he also has those moments where he gets to meet with his colleagues with the honor guard, those kind of things, and so that might be helpful to him too. But he's not. But most of the time, he's flying somewhere very quickly to stop a volcano or a tidal wave, fight bad guys, those kind of things, and he has to do that all the time for almost 20 hours straight. Like even when he's at the award banquet, he excuses himself twice during the dinner to deal with crises as they come up. And so that's one of the reasons why I love this issue so much, because of the storytelling. You feel that tiredness. And so for us as Christians, as followers of God, I mean, you might not even believe in God, and I just want to point out there is a God, and it's the one true God, and He came as Jesus Christ, and but even those who don't believe in God, they get tired, and so this can be a comfort to us, knowing that God is there for us, and He is our source of healing and comfort and protection. And so, even when you are feeling attacked, God is there with us. And so, I want to read verses 5 and 6 again. "Yes, my soul find rest in God. My hope comes from him. Truly he is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will not be shaken." I wanted to read that again just to emphasize so much why it's important for us to have our foundation in God. Because, God doesn't promise us that the world's going to take it easy on us. That's not the way it's going to work. But what we find is that instead of that, we can rely on God to watch over us and to be with us and be a source of protection, and also a source of comfort when things do go bad. So if, losing a job, losing a family member, being bullied, or maybe even literally attacked, we are able to put our faith and rest in God, that we are God's children, and that no matter what happens, God does not leave our sides. But then also something for us to know as God's children is that when someone is down and out, when they are hurting, and they are in trouble, we are called as disciples of Jesus Christ to go and help those. We are acting on God's behalf to minister and to work for them. So that's something really important for each one of us to do. And so I just want to encourage you in that. So read Psalm 62, and especially the next time you feel tired or worn out or exhausted, and really take the time to do that. All right, so let's look at. So we always rate these things, and so this particular issue is almost perfect. Now, I will have to say, like I said, Astro City is my favorite comic series of all time, and so it fluctuates, but there's always that fluctuation of quality of issues. There's certain issues that I don't like as much. Um, some of them handle topics that I don't particularly like. Um, things like that, and so, but there's some really great comic work done in here. So by a craft standpoint, this issue, there's nothing really wrong with the issue. Uh, and so I got sucked into this. And so there's a comic podcast that I listened to that talked about Astro City, and it made me want to give it a try. And so I was actually able to get Astro City #1 digitally for free. There was Comixology had it free, and so I was like, oh, well, it can't hurt to read it, especially since it's free. So I got it digitally, um, and I read it. I was like, oh man, I have just got to know more, and so that's the only knock against this, is that you don't know a whole lot about anything. You just kind of get a taste of different things. Like, you find out about the honor guard, but they talk about, there's Coral, the Enforcer, and all those different heroes, Black Rapier, those kind of things, in there, but you don't know anything about them. So, like I said, but it is the first issue, so they don't have enough time to go into all of that, and so that's the only knock against it, that we don't fully know all that stuff. But that's the great thing, is that once you read more of the comic, you'll get more about these different people and things like that. And so that's, so I'm going to give this comic a 4.75, because it was almost perfect, but it's so good that you want to come back for more, because you want to know more about these heroes. You want to know more about this world that we live in, because this world is so well thought out. Like, there's an issue dedicated to what it's like being a villain flunky, getting hired at the, working at the bar, it's like, okay, well, we're going to sell guns and things like that. So why don't you come on out? And they go and help, and they get told, they're, all right, you're going to be paid, $100. I can't remember what it was specifically, but, you find out what it's like to be a flunky, a minion, just a regular goon for a person. There's an issue of what it's like if you were, one of my favorites is, you're a special forces trained guerrilla, but all you want to do is be in a band and play the drums. And what do you do with that? So it's just really awesome when they go in this kind of interesting direction. And so it's 4.75. Love the comic. Read the comic. It's just so good. Get into Astro City. It's a great series. And so, anyone with questions for us about the biblical lessons that I talked about in this episode, or any of the other episodes that I've either talked about, My Hero Academia or Kingdom Come with Jeff, or the episodes that I worked with my wife Leslie on episodes of Leverage, or just anything about the Bible in general. If you've got questions about anything that comes up in the Bible, life, death, theodicy, anything like that, feel free to reach out to us by email at frickityfracktalkback@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us on Twitter at frickityf or frickityfrack on Instagram and Facebook. And so know that you are loved by God, loved by us, and know that you can find rest in God.